as a product designer, and all of you have some very good qualifications. कोई engineering कर रहा है, कोई कुछ कर रहा है. My main qualification is that I've been practicing design for the last 35 years. Otherwise, I just finished school and then I studied design, and I've been teaching also for a long time. So yeah, welcome, and happy to see all of you have made this choice in summer to do this kind of work. It's actually very rewarding work. It's very hard work, I can see. But I'm sure you'll be you'll take back something from it which is quite something that will last you a lifetime. Okay, so just to get an idea about all of you, how many engineers here? Okay, lots. And so the others, how many from humanities? No. From whatever, architects? No. Designers? Okay. Where are both of you from?
MIT Institute of Design.
Pune?
Yeah.
Okay. What field?
Product.
Product design. Okay. And so what else are the streams represented here? What are you all doing? Engineering. Any other than engineering and design, who's doing anything different? Okay. So within engineering you have different types of engineers, I suppose. Okay. So ICT, mechanical, electrical, okay, electronic. Okay. Have I missed anything? Civil. Okay, civil. Okay. Any other? Have I missed? Textile. Oh, nice. Okay. Okay. So I have some idea. Okay. So you all have been doing lots of hard work for the last 2 days. So I want you to do a small exercise to start with. Find one partner, anybody, okay? And we are going to do 3 things, okay? So and very quickly, we just spend 15 minutes on this. So first you will, of how many of you are there? 30, I suppose, roughly. Anyway, so of the 2 partners, one person is going to be the researcher and one person is going to be the subject. You all decide among yourself. Okay? So the researcher, first you will interview your partner about their footwear. Okay? So you're going to find out from them what footwear they are wearing, why are they chosen to wear that, why did they buy it, what do they like about it, what is it that they maybe don't like about it, okay? And any other thing that they may, something special about it, I don't know, other things. How do they clean it, not clean it, what are the things about it, okay? Quickly, you're going to just get quick answers, okay? After that, the person who's the subject you'll watch them, observe them, they'll walk in the footwear, they'll take it off and walk back without it, and then you will wear it. Okay? Doesn't matter if it's not your size or whatever, but you wear that and then you walk in it. Okay? And then make some observations. Okay, so we don't want chaos here. We can do this very reasonably and systematically. Please just take a place with the partner. Do this exercise, we'll do it in 15 minutes, then we'll discuss what are your findings. Okay? Any confusion about what you're going to do? Clear? You need to first engage with the person, find out about their footwear, then you're going to observe them, and then you're going to try it out by yourself. 3 things. Okay? Observe, engage, try. Okay? Okay, go.
Work relation due to work related purpose.
Okay.
Lightweight.
Safety, protection of the
I'm just saying weight because some people might like a heavy shoe or in a different situation you might like a heavy shoe. Okay. Anything else? Okay.
अपील
purpose is
अपील मतलब
Visual, aesthetic appeal.
Purchase from a small shop, not from a mall.
Okay. Accessibility, where you can
Design. Suitable for design. According to season.
quality.
color.
Type of shoe, sports shoes, sandals, slippers. Without shoes, no complaints for overall.
Quality. Anything else? Any other?
Necessity.
Sorry?
Necessity.
Necessity.
Because it is necessary to wear any kind of
Mixing with clothes.
fashion.
Okay, so when you observe them walking, removing the shoe, putting on the shoe again, so what are your observations?
While removing the shoe.
It felt different.
No, when they were removing, walking with, without, and putting it back on again, what were your observations?
Without shoe, they walk more freely.
Okay. Anyone else? You can have a contrasting observation also. It's not. It may be related to the footwear itself.
I mean, shoes they can like skate on swag and enjoy, but at least without that.
Okay.
Sense of confidence
So, with the shoe.
with the shoe.
What else?
When they remove the shoe, my observation, he didn't open his aglet and just this way. I have no word to express this how to express it.
So he didn't unlace it. He just slipped it out. Okay.
But while wearing it, we have to
Okay.
open it.
Feels safe.
So nobody had this as an issue in this choice? Is it ease of taking on, taking off, putting on, taking off, as the choice of?
It should be a choice. It can be or it should be a choice because it saves time.
Yeah, no, so that's why I'm asking them, did that not come up? So I know some people are in slippers. So is that not different? So that I mean, I'm not, what we've heard is mostly about shoes, but what about sandals and slippers? Were there any differences? Those wearing slippers and sandals, the reason for the choice, the reason for wearing, any differences?
Even like we are very fast as compared to sandal. Sandal can be wear very fast as compared to shoes because also there is a time.
There's a gradient of
Comfort of like how we used to wear slipper. And we are there is a fit then we used to wear.
Free airflow in
sorry?
like if you are wearing slippers or sandals, airflow will be there.
Okay. Okay, so it may be a seasonal choice. We said season, but you may prefer it in this, maybe in another weather you would wear shoes. So, but ease of taking off and putting on, is that a criteria for choice?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Now what about when you wore it? Okay, first of all, how many shoes fit? How many people had fitting? You were able to fit into the other person's? Or how many did not fit? Okay. 3, 4, 5. Your it was fitting, your not fitting? It was loose. Okay. Okay, so what was the experience of wearing the other shoe?
Uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable. Okay.
Comfortable.
And if you were unable to walk because of the size.
Okay.
Lot of effort was required to put half feet in that shoe.
Okay.
Effort.
But the material felt nice inside the shoe. You are unable to walk because of the size difference, but the material felt nice.
Sorry? Grip. Grip was good. Light. So did you feel like a different person? Did you feel like a different person? No? Similar to what you were? Okay. Did anyone find it very different from what they would have personally chosen and therefore?
Yeah, because I'm purchased like sneaker. This is the first time I'm wearing it and I was like just sliding it. So like to test it how it works. So I really like
Okay.
it and next time I purchase this.
Okay. Yes.
Because, just because it was very time to, that's why I would buy it at all.
Because it takes time to try. Okay. Anyone else? I mean, was it unfamiliar? unfamiliar experience. Okay, for those of you who found it familiar, would you wear the same kind of thing in another context? Do you also wear that kind of thing
Yes.
in a different context? Okay. So, is that particular footwear something that person is wearing because it's summer holiday, because it's whatever, this is not regular class, this is slightly different summer camp, or is it because, so what is the primary reason? Is it because of the heat? Is it because of the situation? Is it because of ease of putting on and taking off? Is it because of comfort?
Situation, change in mood, and it is shoes also people wear according to the dress up, like what they are
Okay.
wearing. If they are wearing checks type of, they like to wear it, sneaker to be funky and
Okay.
combinations.
Okay.
And maybe because the traveling is if the traveling is very less, if the traveling distance is very less, then I would also prefer to wear the same one. Because while we travel, like when we travel in trains and all, we have to wear shoes because otherwise someone is for our safety.
Okay.
So,
Okay, so traveling, you mean you have to take a bus and a train?
yeah. So,
Okay.
Just because of walking, field work related, just we have to walk a lot.
Okay.
That's where we can choose it.
Okay, so that is a context you prepared for walking.
Durability is done.
Durability and also comfort while walking. You know that you have to go out, you have to walk a lot, things like that. Okay. So, okay. So just to, of course, this is very preliminary, but should you have to design a shoe for that person, you would have to go much deeper, dive much deeper, perhaps. Yeah, because right now we haven't gotten below the surface. These are just the sort of some of the very obvious things that we have seen. Okay, but one would probably need to get into another layer about context, about personality. So there are a lot of, then there are cultural choices. There would be personality. You don't see yourself in certain footwear. Right? It's also about who you think you are, or who you think you'd like to be. So those are some of the intangible layers. And actually one needs to delve into those as well. Not just what is visible and what is on the surface, which is what we always start with, but one needs to delve into some of those intangible layers. So in Gujarat, how many of you are from Gujarat? Okay, small number. But it is absolutely common that when you enter the home, you take off your footwear. Okay? Or if you, it becomes, you tend to prefer something that's easy to take off. You visit somebody, you're going to have to take off the footwear, then you have to wear it again. Most places you go to, here there'll be even a lot of, there'll be shop situations, there'll be office situations that it's understood that you will take off your footwear. You know, that's not common in other parts of the country. It's related to climate, it's related to perhaps, so there's a Jain philosophy that's very common here. There are a lot of Jains, and for Jains, they are very sensitive to living any kind of insect and things like that. So it's part of a whole living philosophy. So there is a cultural layer associated. So there would be many of these other intangible layers that one would need to look at, which would make a certain kind of thing more appropriate and a better fit. I mean, not just in terms of fitting as a footwear, but fitting as an object to use. Yeah, because it matches with so many of the other qualities that that person matches with the life or lifestyle or situations in which that person tends to go. So the idea is that what we design responds to the person. You don't make the person change to be able to use what you design, rather you accommodate that person's needs in the design. Right? Is that clear? Okay. Okay. So I want to go through a short presentation. So I thought we'll do three things. We'll do an exercise, we'll see the presentation, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about what you all are doing in the field. Unlike researchers in a different setup, I always like to say that we are searching more than researching. Because we are, the research is not the objective of what we are doing. We are doing the research because we want to do something else with it. Yeah? We're doing the research because we want to understand something, and we want to understand it because we want to, in a sense, change it or improve it, is generally the intent. That you want to improve something, which is why you're trying to understand it. Okay? So we are not just researching because you want all that data. We are not really there because we want to just get all this data and map it down and say, 300 people are doing this, 500 people are doing that, 2 people are doing this, 600 are doing. That's not what we are after. So in a sense, we are searching as much as we are researching. Okay? Because we are searching for some insights. You are searching to find some indicators which will give you an idea as to where intervention can be done, how improvements can be done, which is why you actually go to the field. Okay? Okay, so this actually said innovation, it begins with listening, it starts with people. So observation is like listening. Okay? And listening in the sense of very, listening with your whole being. You're not just hearing something because it's going on, but you're listening. Okay, so there's a difference between hearing and listening. Listening means that your attention, your entire interest is in what you're being told, and you're trying to learn something from it. Yeah. So it's also always important in design to be a stranger or to be a beginner. Yeah, it's like you said, when you're in a new context. So there's a certain sense of wonder, of curiosity, of interest when you're in a new context, right? We are all familiar with that. We are kind of a bit gaping and we are looking like, acha, aise bhi ho raha hai, ye bhi ho raha hai, wo ho raha hai. But that is the kind of state you always need to be in. Even if it's familiar, we need to develop a sense of making the familiar unfamiliar, looking at it as if you're seeing it for the first time, because then you're really listening. You're really kind of taking it in. Otherwise, we sort of walk around there like, theek hai, let's just go through it. And we tend to go through a lot of life like that. But this is a different moment. This is a moment when you actually kind of need to attend to things, need to pay attention, and it's useful if you're have. So in Zen, Japanese Zen Buddhism, they call it a beginner's mind. So they say you always should have a beginner's mind, you know. So that means when you're beginning something. So it's the same as when you meet someone for the first time. Yeah, when you're making friends. 20 years later, you're kind of acha theek hai, haan, wo to theek hai. But the first time you make contact, the first time you meet someone, you're like, okay, this guy, he wears this, okay, she dresses like that, okay, she likes this, she laughs like that, you notice a lot of things. Yeah. And, but that's that kind of beginner's mind when you observe. Okay. Okay, so why observation? We can go to the next. Yeah, so I'm just going to tell you first 2-3 stories. So, Procter and Gamble, which bought Gillette some years ago, and they sell razors, and many of you are familiar with that. So worldwide, they have like a 50% market share. They are the leader. But in India, after almost a decade of selling, they weren't really able to penetrate the market, and they couldn't figure it out. You know. So they had earlier done a short study, and their study told them that Indian men have thick, dense hair, more dense than Western people, and so they thought that the problem must be that razors get clogged, you know. And so they had created a razor where you had like a pushing thing which you push it out and it would remove the hair. And they thought this would be a great innovation for this market, and not just India, but a whole region. And since they're based in the US, they invited lots of Indian students who were studying there for test trials. And all those Indian students said, fantastic, it's just great, wonderful. And they said, great, we're going to launch this. And when they launched it, it made no dent in the market. And they were completely confused with what happened. So later on, they decided that they'll send their team here and who'll go and look at people shaving, and maybe finally they decided, okay, we need to go into the field and understand something rather than sit in a, plush situation and make decisions for other people. So when they came out here and started looking at the way people shave, so these are typical examples of many situations. Someone is sitting in the doorway squatting, someone has a mirror on the floor, someone has a really tiny mirror, it's not particularly, you can see only perhaps a part of your face. So those are the kind of situations that they saw. And they were really pretty zapped, because what they saw was men sitting barefoot on the floor in very low light. So they found that in a lot of rural areas, people start the day very early. They have to shave before it's even, brightly lit yet, it's dawn. So light is low, sometimes they have no electricity, so they'll go out into the open in that low light with perhaps no mirror or an apology of a mirror. There's just a little cup of water, there's no running water. And that is the kind of shaving that happens for that large number of people who they want to buy their product. So naturally those Indian students in America, they had running water, they had electricity, they had nice big mirrors, and also that razor that they made worked great, but it really didn't. So it's actually only when you get to the real situation, setting of something, the actual natural setting where something is happening, that you get the insights that are going to tell you something about what is really needed. So in that sense, it's that context that we are looking at that really tells you what we need, what is needed. Okay, so then they were able to come up with a product called Gillette Guard. It became a roaring success, So what they were able to do was make a really cheap product, because now they understood that these people who were shaving, they were still using that blade which sits inside that, the old system, 7 o'clock or whatever, blade which sits in, which has two sides. And so for them, cost is a major factor. So they were able to remove all and what they realized was that their whole thing about shaving is that you can get a really close, clean shave. That's the Western macho thing. But for these men, that was not so important. What was important is that you don't get cut, because you have no feedback, you can't see, you don't have a mirror, there's not much light. So they're all the time trying to see how they can do this without getting nicked. Yeah. So they wanted a safe razor, and so they spend a lot more time shaving. They don't necessarily shave every day. Yeah, but they could spend up to half an hour, because first of all you need to go get water, put it in a cup, set up the situation for yourself. It's just not like you go into the bathroom and you sit on the running tap and and 10 minutes you're out, or whatever, 5 minutes you're out. So they spend sometimes 20-25 minutes. So it's not that they have to have a really super fast shave. It's not that they want to have this really close, clean shave. So you suddenly see that the whole criteria, the needs are completely different. It's not. But they need a very affordable thing, and they need something that is safe. So they were able to then. Okay, so people don't pay for technology, they pay for a solution to their problems or something that they enjoy. So Gillette had the best technology for shaving, right? You have 3 blades and then 5 blades, and I don't know how many layers of blades, and it gives you the closest shave and all that. But that technology was not relevant in a certain context. Yeah, it didn't mean very much to those people, because it came at a certain price. And it offered something that was not what they value. So it's very important to figure out what do people value. And people value different things in different contexts. Or there's a higher value for something. And so I'm sure if you compared ideas about the footwear people were wearing, so some person the comfort is the highest. Like summer I have a problem, I might get a rash or something, and I just need air, I can't be in a closed shoe, or whatever. There'll be some certain criteria. And for some people, it's like, I want to get up and feel like I'm on the go and I'm kind of out to do something today, so I need something that peps me up like that or whatever. So for different situations, different people have a different set of values or a different rating for what they would consider really high. And it's important to kind of get at the heart of that. What is it that people value in a situation? Okay, so then they were able to do this Gillette guard. It sells for 15 rupees, each blade is 5 rupees, it gives 3 shaves per blade. So it actually was able to penetrate the market. So, I don't know, there's some eating up of slides happening. Is that one slide in there? Okay.
You could open the
PDF, yeah.
and then just make it full screen, it would act as like.
Yeah, okay. Shall we do that?
Oh, green wala.
No, okay, just here. Yeah. Just before this, yeah. Okay. So that's the razor that they designed. So it has this. It just has one blade. It has no 2-3 layers of blade. It doesn't have that one lubricating strip. So they were able to eliminate a lot of the things that for these people were not important, and then make a really simple blade which has this comb kind of a thing which helps them, makes it safer. It kind of acts as a sort of in-between barrier, and then that was really successful. But it came out of sort of, and it also takes time to understand these things. To understand Okay, so what do they really want? We'll come to that, but it's not like you can ask these people and they'll say, okay, what we want is a really low cost, safe blade because we don't have running water and we shave in low light. They don't see those things. It's you who sees those things. Yeah, when we go to a new context, we see certain things. Usually because we have something to compare it with. Yeah, and then you can see the difference. Yeah, but one has to become sensitive to how you see these things so that you actually are able to make those. So when someone said that you make observation or inferences, and observation is grasping and understanding, yes, it is, but that is after you've actually seen and noticed. Those are the subsequent stages. Okay. Okay. So observations challenge assumptions. Yeah, when you're actually observing something in its natural setting, your stereotypes, the assumptions you have, this is what must be happening. But when you go out there into the field, and hopefully you all have had some of those experiences of going in the field, you suddenly realize that, oh, this is not exactly as I thought it would be, or this is something unexpected. So you begin to see what people actually do, and sometimes that's a little different from what they say. Yeah. So people say things for various reasons. Then they filter out certain things in interviews, and then there's, I said, there are things that they are themselves unaware of. Those are not things that they notice, but you may notice. So you go with fresh eyes. So this is a thing, what we did in the first thing, exercise was we engaged, so that is you spoke, you interviewed or you talked, then we observed, and then we tried out. And that is generally called a triangulation of methods. Yeah? Because you try and corroborate different things. Yeah? Because sometimes if you only talk to them, they may say something, but what you'll observe may be a little different from that. So people say something because they like to look good. Yeah? So, like if you ask a rickshaw driver that is it really hard in the summer to be driving a rickshaw, he said नहीं जी बहुत ठीक है कोई problem नहीं है बिल्कुल first class है कोई problem नहीं है. So you don't like to look like, you know, you don't you're having difficulty. So if I come and ask you, so how things good? So you say, yeah, fine, yeah, good. You're not going to say, oh, this is a big problem, aaj ye ho gaya, I had a fight with this one, that happened, it's really sad. No, whatever. So people like to generally project themselves in a certain way. So you have to check out that there may be a difference. So there may be other reasons, but people don't always say what they actually do. So that's why we have a triangulation of methods. You observe something, you discuss or talk to people, and then you may try it out yourself. Yeah? So sometimes people get used to things, and then they'll say there's nothing difficult about it, it's fantastic, it's okay. But when you try it out, you realize that okay, it could be much better. It doesn't really have to be like this. It could be lighter, it could be easier to maneuver, or it could be so many things. It could be made of better material, it need not hurt the hands so much. So there will be many things that you will find that would change. Okay, so observations challenge existing theories. So you know, something about time passing. Our existing theories sometimes are dated and things have changed, you know. I mean, it's like now, our whole idea of a certain class of people from whatever, vegetable vendors, sweepers, all, you know, people, they're all now on cell phones, they're all connected. That's kind of made you change your idea about them. Yeah, they may be illiterate, but they're fine with a phone. They're getting on with their lives, using a phone, doing these things. So they tend to. We need to kind of look at things as they are now, as we see them. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And observations lead to insights. So insights are what we are looking for. Yeah, and insights are whatever, clear, deep, meaningful perception into a particular context. So an insight is an interesting thing because you observe something, that's your observation, but you also know many things. So right when I came this morning, I was talking to this group here, and they were telling me about what all they saw in the field, and they said that, you know, in the factories they went to, nobody uses the safety equipment, even though they know that they're supposed to be using the safety equipment, even though the safety equipment probably exists, but it's hot or whatever, and they're not using it. There also, I think they said there were children working, not going to school. So a few things they said. So there are some things that you know. Yeah, you know that it's unsafe to do certain things. You know that there are norms about this. There is some legal framework within all this, which all this operates. What is legal and what is illegal. So we already have a sort of a worldview about those things. So we look at something, we know all these things, and then there is perhaps sometimes a mismatch or there's a gap, and that leads us to certain insights. Okay, this is what is happening, this is how it should be, this is how it is, and it shouldn't be like this, it should change to be better. Okay, and so that is where we kind of find places where we could intervene. Okay, so quickly another couple of stories. So this is a Sony Walkman. Are any of you familiar with it? It's slightly before your generation, but yeah? Okay. So this was launched in '79 and it's a Sony product. It was launched because the chairman, for one, was very fond of music and traveled a lot and could keep feeling that I wish I could carry my music with me. So remember that this is pre-internet, pre-lots of devices, yeah? And so at that time, the smallest thing was one of those, you know, radio tape player things, which is quite bulky, heavy. You know, that was the only way to actually go. And then you had to have many cassettes if you want to take a variety of music with you. So it's not really practical to travel with. And also, he noticed that the younger generation of his children and their friends, they would listen to music all the time, yeah, while working, while eating. So he thought everybody kind of wants to be connected to their music. So they kind of pushed for this miniaturization of the product. And in doing so, they found that the first product they made, it was still very heavy. It had a big headphone which was about ½ kilo, and you know, it could play music, it had good quality sound, and yet it didn't seem like the thing that was going to be what would be people will carry their music with them. So he said, okay, we should go ahead and okay. So we should go ahead and just have only headphone, no recording function, and make a headphone that's really light. So they were able to bring down the headphone to 50 grams, make a compact one, and nobody at that time thought that anybody would be interested in a music player which doesn't record. You know, people were very accustomed to that, sharing music and. But this was one which gave you portability and really good quality sound. And they sort of took that risk. So from the picture at the top is what was possible then. to the one below. And then subsequently again he noticed that suddenly people were getting isolated. You know, till then music was a shared experience, and now suddenly it became a singular thing. So they were the first people who introduced a two-jack kind of a thing, so that two people could listen together, you know, so like couples would feel like, okay, they're sharing music. Subsequently, of course, now it has very much changed and it's become such a solitary thing that you don't want to be disturbed while you're listening to your music kind of a thing, and everyone has their own music. But at that time it was a transition from really playing music that everybody listened to together, it was a group thing, to suddenly being a singular. So this was a way to go in between. Okay, so one story about environments. So in '93 there was a huge earthquake in Latur, Maharashtra, and several villages were completely destroyed. So the thing that happened was that it was a big reconstruction exercise, because they actually had so much damage that they decided that they will rebuild the villages in another, nearby space, because by the time it was cleared out and things like that, it was going to be difficult. The problem that has happened there is, which is the kind of insensitivities that happen when we don't engage, observe, and actually try out things. So they've built this huge new settlement, but they are built on this grid pattern. Yeah? And it is very different from the earlier villages and the traditional way, which is a cluster pattern. Every village is a cluster, and there is the marketplace at the center, and then there are houses around, and people, so that it's a kind of enclosed community space. And now you have this grid kind of a thing. So it's become very difficult for the villagers, and they've actually had no choice and have adopted this sort of semi-urban kind of life, which is not natural to them. So as someone says that in the old village, the marketplace was at the heart of the village, everybody would meet there. Our social customs compel us, so we meet and greet in the marketplace. That's the way the village works, right? And now everybody has grown apart. So another comment was that when a person died, the whole village kind of came around earlier, and now it's almost become as if it's that family's event, because just the way the situation has changed. Yeah. Okay. So also people they can't use their traditional kitchens and their chulas, because this new kind of city type block, the roof gets all smoke and soot, and so many of them now have started cooking outside the house. There's not much space to keep their agricultural implements, food, grain. So that was a different kind of life, this little one-room kitchen kind of situation that has been provided to them is completely unlike what they expected. And also, even a decade later, the fear of this solid structure collapsing. So a lot of them have created tin sheds outside this house, and they keep their cattle, they sleep there a lot of the time. So that house is just like a storeroom. This what is supposedly a fancy city-like dwelling which has been built for them, but it's completely out of connect with what they would have needed. Okay. So when you're observing, so the observation is that, so if someone is trying to do some grating, it's important to first just see what is actually happening. So the box is moving, so if you have a grater with a box below, so the box is moving and Bhavya had to hold it. So that is the observation. That is actually what is happening. That is plainly what you see. The inference is that grating became difficult. Yeah. So then there's the next stage from the observation. And the judgment is that the grater was difficult to use unless the box is held steady. Okay, so that's at another, once you understand the situation, you grasp it, you make a judgment. So you don't jump. So you don't see something and make a judgment, oh, this is hard to do. Oh, this is not very well done. Yeah? That is not an observation, that is a judgment. We never start with judgments. We start with observations. Yeah? The judgments come after processing, inferences, trying to make connections with other things. Then we may have judgments, and which will be pointers to how things might change. But we must start with observations of just seeing what is actually before us. Okay. So observations are specific, but then they have to be interpreted. Okay. So how to observe? So there are many techniques. So one is like at the top, you can have a, that's the like basic, always have a notebook, make doodles, sketch, take notes. So the advantages of that is that it's cheap, it's easy to do, it's immediate, you can just open something and start doing it. It's not interfering, and though sometimes it may be difficult to verbalize some of the things that you're seeing, because you need to immediately kind of be able to put it down so that later on when you read it, you know what you meant when you said that. Okay? So below, the other option is that you can do video or you can record. So you can see a sequence of things happening, you can see other things which you may not have been able to note everything down, like body language, many other environmental factors, which is difficult to note many things down. But it can be costly, it can be time consuming, and it also may not cover everything. And you'll get, but the nice thing about it is that you can always revisit it. And you can replay it, look at it many times. The other one is to do images, just still pictures, which is useful because it gives you a lot of contextual data. And you can then arrange those images, try and do some things with them. But it also doesn't give you movement, it doesn't give you the kind of thing that photographs give you. So what's important is that you mix. So it's like you mix methods. You do interviewing, you do observing, you do trying out. You also mix techniques of capturing observations so that you will get rich data which can be So what to observe? We observe the ecosystem of the product. That means what is the setting, how is things being used, what are the other things being used in that setting. So there's a whole interrelation, a whole network of objects that we may be looking at. But we also need to look at the context. So who is the user, what is their experience, what is their body language, expressions, statements, what are things that they are doing in that situation, and what do people care about in that situation. That's where we can begin to understand what is of value. And as we spoke earlier, something of value in that context may not be something that we perceive similarly. But it's interesting to get to that. Okay. So if we focus only on the problems people know they have, we won't really innovate. So, if we ask, we'll get some inputs, but that's what is on the top of people's heads. Yeah? But one needs to dive much deeper than that, so we can do more than solve known pain points. Some known pain points will emerge, but we want to get, and you want to uncover needs that are buried in the situation. Okay, and finally, so there are some ethical concerns in doing field work. Okay, so do we understand the term informed consent? What is informed consent? Anyone come across that term? No? Okay, so So how would you like it if I arrived at your house and said, okay, like I'm just going to watch you now. How do you go through your life? And what are you doing? How do you eat? Okay, then what do you do? You know? So we'd probably just shut someone out and say, you know, no way. Yeah? But so we need to, so it's important to build the trust. Yeah, I would need to first talk to you, say why I want to come, what is it that I'm trying to do, explain to you, explain something about myself, who I am. Is it acceptable to you that I come into your life situation and watch you? So it's important to build that trust and for the person to be informed that this is what we are doing and this is why we are doing it. So we can't treat them as, okay, you know, you're in a situation and we can come and watch you. It's our privilege. Yeah? So it's important to engage with those people before at that level where we explain our and get their trust, you know. Privacy, so we also need to respect those people and not go beyond what is what they consider their private domain. Yeah? So there is a kind of threshold which we don't. Then there should be no harm that comes to them. So we need to be careful about these things. Yeah, it's also it's also what we need to assure them of, that how will you use this information. It should not in any way jeopardize or put them in danger of any kind. Yeah, so that is important to communicate, and safety is also yours in a sense, because you may be going into situations which are unfamiliar, so it's on both sides. It's their safety and it's your safety as well. So just to give you an example, we had a bunch of students at NID whose project was about sex education in schools. Yeah? And so they wanted to go and talk to students about this. And so what they did was they went to the school and they went to the playground and they just went there and started meeting groups of students and started asking them questions about sex education. Do you have it in your school? What happens? How do you find out things? Okay, where do you learn things from? And then the teachers found out and the principal found out, and it became a big issue that, you know, what's going on? What is this conversation we are having? So the better way to have done it would have been to approach the principal, explain the project, explain it to the teachers, find out when, where they should meet the students. So you can't do this kind of guerrilla thing also, you know, just, okay, we're going to quickly go and get our data and meet them in the playground and get on with it, but it can really backfire badly. Yeah? So that's something to be taken care of. And also exploitation, which is again a thing where in another situation, your intentions should be clear. Should not be seen as exploitative. Why you're doing something should be communicated and explained and be transparent. You know, so there's no kind of hidden agendas. Your experience so far, what you all have seen, and what you think are the issues with researching in the field, and you know, what are the doubts you have, what would you like to know about how to proceed with that material, things like that. So anyone, any of the groups, I know you all have been to some small scale industries, you've been to slums, you've looked at those situations and tried to look at what are the issues in that. So, you know, what has been your experience? Yes.
First of all, whenever we have asked them, like, what are your problems in doing, like, they were like, no, we don't have any problems. Like we are happy with what we have. So we are trying to innovate something. So if suppose we find a solution, though, how do we implement to them? But they are not ready to accept any change in their system. So how do we do this? Like suppose we have implemented a design, like we developed a design and we manufactured it. So how do we implement in the system?
Okay, so the thing is that if we are able to make something that people really find of value, then people adopt it. You know, it's possible that they don't know they need it. Yeah, it's like we never knew we need phones which we can just do like this, and you turn it like this. And if you asked somebody before when the old phones were there, that what kind of a phone do you need, they wouldn't say, oh, I want one which I can flip like this and the image goes like this, and then I can just go page to page like this. So people may not know what they need or what they could use. Yeah. So that is the challenge, that how do we find something that is of real value to them. You know, and it's not, so which is why, especially in these contexts, it's not about something that's smart and good looking and what we call designer in inverted commas and things like that. It's about something that is of real meaning to their lives. Only then will they adopt it. It has to be meaningful in their lives, in their context. And so the struggle and the search is to find what is that of meaningfulness. So it can't just be from, it requires a much longer and deeper engagement to understand than to do something where, very quickly because then there is the greater chance of what you're saying, that they won't change and they won't adapt. But if they really see great value in it, then they will make the difference. It's the way so many of these people who are not literate, who are not savvy with technology otherwise, everybody has adopted a cell phone. Yeah? Today your whatever, bhajiwala se leke, the sweeper on the street, everybody has a cell phone of different, and they found their way to work around it. How they enter data, how they save that data, how they access that, they worked it out. Yeah? But they see great use in being connected. Yeah? It increases their opportunities for them, it increases their sort of being able to monitor where beta kahan hai, kya hai, the women are feeling connected, they feel empowered, they can find out things. Even women who come and work in homes, they may be doing 3-4 homes and they are connected, all their madams are calling them up and she can say that I am not coming today or whatever. So in many ways, when they have seen great value in it, when it changes their lives for the better, then they adopt it. Yeah. But for us, the challenge is that how do we understand what will be of real value to them? How can we empathize with their life? So it's not about what we think. So like that in that earthquake example, we think that this very organized urban planning is very good. Everything is street number this, street number that, and it's all very organized. You have straight roads and you have, crisscross, and you can find an address. But that is completely different for them, it's a different thing. The community life is much more important. How the community interacts is more important. So they have different kinds of priorities. So it's important to get to try and uncover and understand that. That answers your question. So yeah, so any other observation from? Go ahead.
When I asked, when he told it has become a habit. It's everyday students like you come to us and ask, what is your problem, what is this and what is that. So अच्छा लगता है आप लोग आते हैं पूछते हैं. So we have been habitual to it. this was one observation that was really like,
Yeah.
कि everyone comes
So
go there.
it's perhaps a little cynical also because maybe they think nothing happens. लोग आते हैं, पूछते हैं, चले जाते हैं और हम वहीं के वहीं रह जाते हैं, kind of a thing. So yeah, that's unfortunate and that's probably their experience of what happens to them.
Ma'am, I would like to add to that.
But it's also important in these situations that we don't raise any false hopes. And you need to be transparent about who you are, what you are doing, and that what you are doing may not immediately kind of just give them a great new, So we need to be realistic about it to ourselves and to them, and importantly for them, so that they don't have this false, so this feeling doesn't develop, that nothing actually happens and nothing changes. Yeah.
Ma'am, actually, when we went there to that place, so I observed that whenever we were asking them questions or trying to find out information, they were very explanatory in their approach. As in, they would try to, justify that whatever they are doing, meaning how they are making use of the limited resources they have. They would not concentrate, meaning they would not tell us the problems which meaning they do not know what the problems they have in a deeper aspect, like what we are trying to ask them. They would rather go and show us, they would explain to us what they are doing. They wouldn't tell ki this is that this should be changed or this should happen. So when we were trying to tell them ki do you think here something else could have happened, then they would be like, there was a sense of doubt in their mind, what is she trying to ask. So how to communicate.
In a sense, that's very nice if they'll allow you access to actually see what they're doing. It's an amazing thing I always find over here that we go to a village, we go there, and they just warmly welcome you into their house. They'll give you tea. They'll say this is it. They'll explain everything. Imagine the reverse happening. We, with all our kind of biases, wouldn't allow any of that. I don't want anyone to watch me. What am I doing? Why am I doing? And we have this very open kind of society where people accept and they'll open up everything to you. So in a sense, that gives you the opportunity to study it and perhaps draw inferences from it, rather than while it's useful to find out from them, but sometimes when they will say maybe this is a problem, maybe that is a problem, what you can observe and see may be more telling or maybe more informative for you than just what they will say to you. Because as I said, when people say what they want, partly they don't even imagine that it could be very different, or they sort of don't do that. They may not also know how else it could be changed. And they also like to project themselves well, in good light, So they may not say this is difficult, but you may be able to observe it. So just the fact that they'll give you access is a great thing, that it allows you to actually observe, it allows you to go into that situation, it allows you to make your own notes, whatever, take photographs, and they're kind of, in fact they sort of quite enjoy it because they don't do that and they're happy to be photographed and things like that. So that's a big thing actually to be able to do that. It's a privilege actually, and we should treat it so, because it is a privilege. It's not something that would be possible in engagement. So if you are engaged with the community for a much longer time, it gives you the opportunity to go deeper and deeper and really come to come to something very core or central. Here we may not have that kind of extended engagement, which is actually necessary, when we want to make a change. So let us not think that this is going to be that one thing, If it is also an important contributory thing, it's also worth doing. So at some level it should be worth doing, and we have to be able to discern whether is it worth doing, So in their context, is it worth doing? It may not be the most important thing, but is it still worth doing? Then it's worthwhile to engage with it. Yeah, because in the short term, it's otherwise not so easy to it's a different context, and we need to spend time to understand it. It's not so easy to grasp in a very short time.
Actually, they are like from the basic needs, like they don't have enough shelter, water, even pure water facilities. Their children can't go to school because they have limited income, and they also have to put themselves in works to support their families. Women are also doing some not proper stuffs and like that. Because we went to the dump yard area, like Pirana nearby that.
Right.
So the peoples are also from outside of Gujarat. Like they told us that we are from MP Madhya Pradesh area, and so they do not have even electricity facility like that. So they don't seek for great innovations or like that. They just want to satisfy their needs and enough wages. They even like from the salary, like they have only 100 to 150 rupees per day for their hard work on a full day, like that. So what's your comment on that? What should be done?
So see, the thing is that in all these situations, these are complex systemic problems. It's not like just some tool to be able to do something better. It's like it's a whole situation, and it's a complex situation, and to change it or to improve it, it will mean a whole network of things which will have to have. Maybe some policy change, maybe some government intervention. So there will be a whole host of issues. It's not like one action is going to change it. It's like a combination of things which will actually work in that situation. Okay. But one could look at some part of it, and see how that could be improved. It's not going to be possible. We don't have like some magic wand that we do and everything is going to be sorted out. And we have to be realistic about that. That is not...
Like one thing which I observed was in the Pinara village, like when we were entering there, the Sarpanch told us that here the Hindu community and the Muslim community both live together. So like at first I thought like this is a village, so there won't be much harmony between the Hindus and the Muslims, like as we hear, and it was a village, so I thought like it would be the case. But in the afternoon when we there I saw a mandir and a masjid just separated by a wall, like on this side it was mandir and on that side it was masjid. So I came to know that there was a very good, they existed in mutual harmony, like there was a very good unity between the Hindus.
They have common entry.
Yeah, and even like when I was going, so I didn't know like how to ask where is the mandir. So, but I asked like he was a Muslim guy, so I asked him where is mandir. So like he didn't hesitate at all, and he was very friendly. So how is this like in very remote areas like that people like coexist? So like in a very mutual.
So actually that is the reality. They actually all do coexist. It's usually...
like in the cities, we hear cases of violence, but in the remote areas where we expect to, like I was of the concept, in my mind I was of the thought that there
it will be worse in the village.
Yeah. So, but it was the opposite.
Yeah. So in a sense, it's often the opposite, because it's a less impersonal place. Everybody actually meets everybody, and you actually see them as people, not that he is only. And they all have shared problems. They have similar situations. So very often it's actually the reverse. So there's another thing that I found often with my students. We do some exercises where students go and look at street food vendors, and then we try and look at what are the kind of problems they're having and how would we intervene in that situation. And so very often students who go out and do this exercise and meet them and talk to them, they are very frustrated, and they say that they don't want to change, they don't want to grow, they don't want to expand, and they just want to remain as they are, kind of a thing. And that is something that's very hard for them to comprehend, that what is this, why don't they. But it's a different mindset, and it's something that one needs to appreciate. So their idea of success is not that I have one stall and then I'll have 5 stalls and then I'll have an SUV and then I'll have a whatever, something.
That's a franchise.
I'll be having franchise, and that's not. So they found that one stall supports like almost 15-20 people. There'll be so a lot of them are migrants. They're here, they're like 2-3 families, 3 brothers or whatever something, and their wives, children, everybody, and they're all supported from the income of that one stall. And in many cases they're all working also towards that. So if it's a Pani Puri stall, the women are waking up at 4 o'clock, making puris every day, which go, they don't have refrigeration, things are done on a daily basis. They have to be done every day. So if you have to sell Pani Puris at 5 in the evening, you have to actually start working at 4 in the morning, so that you get the potatoes, you boil the potatoes, you make the atta, you make the puris, it's a whole thing, and there are 50 people. So in their idea of things, if that stall works successfully and all those people are reasonably looked after, for them that is satisfactory. They are not looking at that like I'm going to have a franchisee of things, and so we have this idea of expansion and growth, and if you've done 1, then you have to do 5, if you've done 5, then you have to do. That's not their idea of, or that's not their path as they see it, and that's the kind of thing that you have to begin to appreciate, that it's not what we think should be the trajectory of their, we have to understand what is their aspiration. It can be quite different. Yeah.
At a personal level or a social level, there are some problems which we can solve. But considering the whole system to work efficiently and involve such people also in that system, the system needs to be improved. So I know that this question is it's pointless because we cannot change the system, but what can be done to get that change, or at least induce that change in the system where the whole system changes and adapts, or such loopholes are closed and these people are a part of it, because from our side we can do many things, but there are some factors which we cannot control, like government. So even if we vote for the government, technically the government, we should be telling them to do some things, but as you know, it doesn't work in India. So
I kind of don't want to agree with you, because I'd like to believe that you can change the system, and unless you believe that you can change the system, then you're stuck in this situation कि कुछ तो होता नहीं है, ये तो ऐसा ही है. So there has to be that thing that it can be done. It may not be in the time frame of this summer school, but you have a lifetime. Yeah. And so that belief is important, because otherwise it becomes a kind of I'll sort of visit you today and say a few things and then I'll go away, but that's not how it actually makes a difference. So Yeah.
Ma'am, the observation I had was that, ma'am, the people has found their solution. Now, no matter what, however small it is for us, but they have found a particular solution of their problem and they are happy about it at every moment. So, ma'am, how could, मतलब जैसे few people suggested about it कि they are happy in their own way. So, ma'am, according to me, they are happy because they have found their own solution about it.
Yeah, so see, the thing is that we all get by, right? You don't have all the things you need, but you get by, and it's also the people you will see, they actually have a great spirit, and in the situation that they're in, they do the best they can. But it's still often, it's not safe, it's not comfortable, it's not easy, it's not so many things. No, but it's actually in great difficulty. Sometimes with risk to their health. Sometimes, so there are so many other factors that they are actually risking or sacrificing, because in that situation that has, the show must go on kind of a thing, it happens. But that need not be so, and it need not be that they have to pay with their health and they have to pay with their kind of the whatever well-being of their children, and they have to pay with with so many things. So some of those things can be looked at and can be seen. How do you change the circumstances, make it not so bad?
So how could we convince them about it that we have made a product, right? So how could we convince them that you should buy it because it's for your good only?
Yeah, well, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. You can't convince them about it. They have to be convinced by the object, by the solution, And so in many of these situations, it's worthwhile to involve them in developing it. Sometimes what you do is you half make something roughly, and then you show it to them and take their input and say, okay, so if it was going to be like this, what do you think? And they may be able to use it and say, okay, no, but then they may be able to point out things that we have not considered. So sometimes you co-create with them, you involve them, and because it's not always possible that we can think of everything, especially from their point of view. But from an initial kind of understanding, if we can develop something, then you can build it and then actually take it back to them and test it. And so it's an iterative process. It's not like you finish something and then you have it ready, and then you go and then they'll say, no, what can I do with this? And then you're like, oh God, it didn't work. But instead, it's better to build together, so you get their input into it. Yeah.
Ma'am, just like you gave an example of PNG, okay, they called Indian guys over there. But if we call the guys from slum, they know the answer, we want to listen. We gave them a solution, they will agree. Oh, acha.
So it's important to go there, because that natural setting, the real setting is what is very important. It's all okay in sitting in Boston, you call some swanky students who come there and use it in some fan. It's not the same as shaving in the village, right? Shaving over there was completely different. It was not different from what the Westerners were doing. And so just the fact that they're Indian boys didn't make it an Indian market, in that example. But actually going and seeing, so it's not just their beard, and but it's also how much water you have in a cup, it's also what is the light condition, do you have a mirror or not. So it's all those things which you become aware of in that setting. So it's very important to go into the environment rather than do it in a. So there are also some of these things. There is also some of the downsides of doing this kind of field work. And one of them is, of course, that we have our own biases, and those we need to overcome. But the other is that by watching someone, we may cause them to behave differently. you know, what they may do when they are naturally doing something, they may not do it like that in front of us, you know, because I don't know, it just doesn't look nice, or it just you're trying to be. So one has to be mindful of these things, that you're not making. So if that, which is where it's very important to build that rapport and trust with the field of where you're going, so that then they feel at ease and they're not actually doing something to please you, which is then becomes, you know, it becomes a little counterproductive, because you don't get to the real insights that you want. So those are some of the dangers, and that we have to watch them, you know. So you have to also be conscious of your own biases, because we all carry biases, that's a natural thing. And
So
so
why-
they don't interfere. Yeah.
So why there is a need to tell them that we are here to see them. जैसे हम फील्ड विजिट पे जाते हैं तो हम सीधा बोलते हैं कि हम यहाँ देखने आए हुए हैं, तो हम ऐसे भी तो जा सकते हैं कि बिना बताए एकदम से घूम के एकदम से वो आ गए.
Yeah, but बिना बताए घूमते घामते गड़बड़ भी हो सकती है. No, and also it's not just, it's not fair, right? So you know, in that kind of situation, a foreign male looking at women in that situation, we have a context, we have a situation where people will be offended. So you can get beaten up. I mean, those are the kind of hazards in that situation of being, of not being transparent and not communicating. In some senses, it seems like, "Acha, kaam ho jayega, hum samajh lenge," they will also not know. But on the other hand, it's a little, it's dangerous, and it's sort of, you know, we can't treat them as they are some. It's not a museum piece कि हम जाके देख रहे हैं और वो अपना काम कर रहे हैं kind of thing. No, they are living their lives. So we need to be sensitive to that kind of thing. Yeah.
Just add to that, when you go to field, there are different groups of, there are children. When we went to the Bloom community, children just came in with, they were asking for money, and then photographs, camera, and then click. That is one aspect. Then when we went to this slum area, then there were some adults who were asking कि कितना पैसा लेके आए हो, है ना, क्या दे सकते हो, and then there was this community of broom makers, एक और जमालपुर में, which was saying that ये लोग तो science से हैं, in a very this manner. So how does one tackle all these different age groups when we enter the field, and so one has to be focused in their thing, but at the same time you have to deal with it in a very empathetic manner.
Yeah.
So how does one
So
approach this?
without offending, you need to make your intentions and your situation clear. I mean, the best thing is to be transparent about it, that you're students, that you're here on a project. So you're not like some Mr. Moneybags who has come with, or any of that. And that you're researching and trying to study, so it needs to be made clear to them. And that's why I'm saying it also takes time. There have been situations where one has gone and been completely rejected a few times, but one has to persist with that till you can, and sometimes what's important is to follow protocol. So if you can get the panchayat man or someone, the village headman or somebody who's a responsible person, if you can talk to them and have their backing where they say, yes, okay, we have understood what it is. And so usually in those situations, if you have that, then the other villagers will feel, okay, they have spoken to someone in authority and it's all right for you to be there, So we take students from NID for a 2-week thing in a village to live there and study. But we spend a lot of time prior to that going back and forth, talking to whoever are the important people there, establishing what it is that we want to do, showing them some work that we have done in the past in other villages, things like that. So that we are able to then have them understand that we don't have any kind of, there's no hidden agenda, we're not coming from any, so, it's transparent and this is what we're trying to do. So it takes that kind of building of trust. Yeah, which is quite important.
Try to find solutions. There could be two possibilities. One is that see they have adapted to the situation and they think, I have been to places where mostly people's attitude is like nothing can change. Okay, so why are you here wasting our time and hindering our daily life? Other could be that it might raise the expectations and what if we don't go back to them and don't give anything. In both the cases,
Yeah, so that's what I was saying, it's important to be transparent, but it's also, so we tend to have this in our head that we are going to do something for them, or we are going to do something in their life, but to a great extent it's something that's going to happen to your life. Yeah, and it's something that is going to change you. And you are going to learn from them. Yeah? So it's important to communicate that also to them, that you're also there to learn from them. It's not like वो क्या potential difference होता है और वो it flows from one to the other, no? But it should flow from both, in both ways. Yeah, it's not as if you are at this higher potential and it's only going to flow from you to them. To a great extent, it's going to come from them to you. You know? And so it's important to also communicate that you are there to learn from them actually, to a great extent. And it is fascinating, some of those things, like if you look at the broom makers, they really have a technique of doing that. Yeah, it's an activity that they do, they have an understanding. There is so much tacit knowledge in many of those things. They know कि वो उसकी smell ऐसी हो जाती है, मतलब वो ठीक से सूख गया. Which they know it, you know, we don't know why, but they understand it at so many levels. So it's a fascinating thing to first be able to know what all they know.
Even I think that when we go to a community, in fact we should not tell everyone this is quality and I think we should say we just here to know your lifestyle because we are new. I think that is a better way.
Sure.
Actually, yesterday I told something of
like informed consent, we should tell them
Yeah, so that's what I was saying, that it's important to be transparent. So while one says that we want to learn something and we want to know, but we are also trying to do something. So all cards are on the table. You know, there's nothing that afterwards they find out, acha, but you are actually trying. I mean, there's none of that. No, it's like how you would like to be treated. You never want to be deceived in any way. The same thing.
It creates a sense of consciousness among them. They don't behave like that. They usually do that in that manner, but they have a consciousness कि oh ये देख रहा है तो.
How do you do it? How do you do it? So it's like I learn some techniques from you and I give some techniques.
Yes, so actually there should always be some, so you, while trying to know about their lives, one always has to put something about yourself also out there. You know, you can't just be completely like, you don't know who I am, and they will ask you questions, you know, acha, shaadi nahi hui? Acha, especially when you're a young girl who go there.
Cooking in outside the house, so like I asked them what it is made of. They were like, it's made of mud. Like it was like so obvious to them. Then I showed them that curiosity. So then they were giving back that curiosity from their side. They were like, okay, so like they would. But I didn't go to that extent. But they were interested to know how we do it.
Yeah.
So that way, it goes forward ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like this is
all
how
about
I
art
do
of
it. How do you do it?
communicating and art of connecting with the people.
Yeah, it's important.
And then they slowly accept it also, like, yeah, even I should change my ways or something.
Ma'am, sometime when you go to places like slums and all, you have a perception before that, you make a judgment that वहाँ जो लोग रहते होंगे, the people, they must be poor, they must have a problem. And then you started observing things in your way, So at this time, at this point of view, your judgment comes before observation, and that may lead to the manipulation of what you can observe in reality. So how you can cope with that, because this is a very important aspect in design. You have, means whatever you are going to dare and you are just for your project or whatever it is, you just have to observe from the ground level the real things, and then you have to make judgment, and then you can do anything. But at some kind of point, students like us, many of us, means common problem this is, you judge things before and then you start observing, and then you miss out the things what you need to observe.
Yeah, but just the fact that you're saying this, that means you're already conscious of it.
Yeah.
And the important thing is to be conscious of it, you know, that, so it's important to also question yourself. Like, am I being biased? Is this based on my own stereotypical idea कि slum जाऊँगा तो मुझे यही दिखेगा? I'll just see poverty. I'll just see. So there's this Italian professor of design who had come and who had gone with a few students to a rural setting, and he made a very nice observation. He said that I didn't think that happiness, poverty and poverty, happiness and can coexist, you know. So you expect that because they're poor, they'll be like so miserable, and but he said that's beauty, poverty, and happiness can coexist, you know. But he said, but I've seen it here. So this is they're poor, but there's a lot of happiness and there's a lot of aesthetic quality to their homes, to whatever, and so all these things coexist here, you know. And it's not what you expect. Yeah, you think it's going to be a really hard, you know, ugly situation. They're going to be unhappy people, but that's actually not so very often.
They're very much more organized than us. Because
exactly.
I saw, like I trusted them, I'll go inside and see your room. And when I saw that everything was well managed, like the space they had, everything was clean, like one thing is here, the other thing is here, everything was so organized. But when I go back to my room, it's like I throw my bag here, all the books are here. So in spite of having all the facilities and cupboards and everything is a mess. So it's not just what we're trying to assure.
Okay.
Any other